Hello, my name is Jacob. You might know my grandmother, Sarah. She shared her own story about how God keeps his promises, even if he takes his time, and even if he seems kind of funny in the way he does it. I'm also here to tell you about God keeping his promises. But my experience of God is not so much that he is funny. For me, God has been strange, awesome, and a little scary. God is not a creature like you and me, but different. Very different. And not anything you could ever control. Your first reaction might be, if God is so strange and different, maybe I'd better just stay away. But I'm here to tell you that knowing God has been the best thing in my whole life. Despite the strangeness, I hope that after hearing my story, you'll want to know God too. Now, the first thing I should tell you is that I'm really not like my grandfather Abraham. Abraham was a great man in every way. He obeyed God, he followed God, he listened to God, he believed God's promises, even when they seemed impossible. I always admired the old man. And my father, Isaac. He was great too. He and my mother, Rebecca, were a love match from the start. My dad was very good at listening to God. My mom, well, she had opinions of her own. That's where the trouble started. You see, I'm a twin. My twin brother Esau and I started fighting right inside of our mother's belly. And we never stopped. Probably our parents should have worked harder to make peace between us, but as sometimes happens, they each had a favorite. Dad's favorite was Esau. They were both hunters, tough guys. I was Mom's favorite, a little more quiet and thoughtful, but also, to be honest, I was kind of sneaky, just like my mom. Well, back in those days, it mattered a lot what order you were born in. Oldest sons got the best deal. The younger sons, we got a bad one. And the thing is, even with twins, one of them comes out first. So, technically, Esau was the older son. Even if only he was older by a few minutes. That meant Esau would inherit everything. Land, sheep, goats, tents, you name it. I would get nothing and have to find my own way in the world. Our mom always hated that. Because, after all, she loved me best. When the time came for the special ceremony, when our old dad Isaac was ready to name Esau, the oldest, as his heir, Mom came up with a sneaky idea. I won't go into all the details, but basically, she fooled my dad into thinking I was my brother Esau. I got everything. Land, sheep, goats, tents, and above all, our dad's blessing. In one way, it felt wonderful. Finally, after being my dad's less loved son, I got his blessing all to myself. But also, I felt pretty horrible for the trick I'd played. Dad didn't really mean to bless me. He meant it for Esau. Dad wasn't going to love me more after he found out what I'd done. And Esau was going to be, furious. And he was. Esau was so angry, in fact, that I had to run off and find my own way in the world anyways. So that's how I left home. As a sneaky son on the run from his rightfully furious brother. But as I know now, God was looking after me. Even me, the dishonest little brother. One night, I was alone in the desert. I had so little stuff with me that I had to grab a stone to use as my pillow. Not very comfortable, as you might imagine. But while I slept, I had the most amazing dream. I dreamt of a ladder set on the earth that reached all the way up into heaven. I saw angels climbing up and down the ladder. All the way at the top of the ladder, I saw God. Yes, the Lord God himself. And God looked down from the top of the ladder and spoke directly to me. He said, "I am the Lord. I am the God of your grandfather Abraham and of your father Isaac. I promised to them, and I promise to you also, children and grandchildren, countless descendants. I am with you now. I will take care of you wherever you go. I will never leave you until I have done everything I have promised." Then I woke up, and I knew for sure that God was real, and that he would take care of me, even me, just like he did my father and grandfather. Of course, I'm a practical man. I thought, if I'm going to have children and grandchildren, I'd better have a wife. Well, that turned into quite a long story too. I fell in love with a beautiful girl named Rachel. But she, like me, was the younger child. Her older sister was named Leah. Not quite so beautiful, and, well, I didn't love her. But Rachel and Leah's rotten father tricked me into marrying the wrong one. I ended up with Leah, not Rachel. I got so mad, but there was nothing I could do, except promise to work for their father until he let me have Rachel as well. Back then it was allowed to have more than one wife. Let me tell you, this was a terrible idea, as I found out. But I suppose I deserved what I got. After all, I'm the one who tricked my own father and brother. Why shouldn't someone else's father and sister trick me? By the time it was all over, I had 4 wives, 12 sons and 1 daughter. In a family like that, the drama never stops. You can read about it if you're curious. But that's not where I want to end my story today. Instead, I want to tell you about my other encounter with God. Because you might be thinking, hey, wait a minute, Jacob. You told us about your ladder dream and about how God promised to be with you. But it seems like your life was nothing but trouble, even after you met God. What's that all about? Yeah, it's true. You can know God and still have a life full of trouble. God isn't some magic trick or perfect pill that gives you a soft and easy life. Sometimes it's just the opposite. I think maybe God does it that way so you won't use him. You can't use God to get something else out of him. You have to either love God for who he is or avoid him altogether. Of course, avoiding God doesn't mean you'll stay out of trouble either. Life is one trouble after another. But still, I think it's better to know God, just for the sake of knowing God, even if life continues to be trouble. So now to my other encounter with God. It happened at night, again. This time I wasn't alone. By now I had my enormous family with me, plus all of our animals and equipment and everything else. Actually, to tell you the truth, we were running away from my brother Esau again. That guy just wouldn't give up. So I sent my family on ahead to keep them safe in case Esau caught up with me. And sure enough, in the night, I was attacked. But not by Esau. It was some other man. I didn't know who. I thought maybe Esau sent him to kill me. But as it turned out, this mysterious man and I were evenly matched. Neither could defeat the other. We ended up wrestling all night. By daybreak, I was exhausted, but still not defeated. Just then, the man caught me off guard. He did something to my hip, and pop! It went out of joint. Boy, did that ever hurt. And yet, I held on. I still didn't give in. So at last, the man spoke to me. He said, "The sun is rising. Give up already and let me go." I wondered, why does this man want to quit, now that the sun is rising? Doesn't he want me to see his face? So I looked at him in the dim early light, and suddenly, Suddenly I had a feeling. And then, an inspiration. I said, "Sure, I'll let you go, but only if you bless me first." Bless me? That request was my way of letting the man know that I had guessed who he really was. He said, "What's your name?" I figured he already knew, but I answered anyway. "Jacob," I said. Then the man said, "No, you have a new name from this moment forward. Now you are Israel, because Israel means the one who wrestles with God." Yes, you have wrestled all night with a man and with a God at the same time. And you may not have won, but you also haven't lost. Of course, then I was incredibly curious. I had to know. "Please, tell me your name," I begged of this person, who had just given me a new one. But he only said, "Why do you want to know?" He wouldn't tell me. But then he blessed me and let me go, and disappeared from my sight. A lot happened after that. My dear Rachel died giving birth to our youngest son, Benjamin. When our oldest son, Joseph, grew up, he made his half-brothers so mad at him that they sold him down to Egypt. I thought he was dead and grieved for him. God ended up using that disaster to save our whole family. I won't go into it now. My point is that knowing God didn't save me from trouble, but knowing God got me through the trouble. And knowing God taught me that God really isn't human like us. Not a creature, not someone you can trick or bargain with. God is always one step ahead of us, and you can't fool him. And yet, despite all that, God blesses us. God thinks we're worth wrestling with. God takes the trouble to come down his ladder and fight it out with us. But it always ends with him blessing us. I hope you also will wrestle with God, and in the process, receive God's blessing in your own life.